Good afternoon, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
It's nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, I'm excited.
Okay, let's just go quickly to the questions that we have on for discussion. I watched one of the interviews by the Canadian Live in Press. I'm sure I got that.
Live in Books.
Live in Books, okay.
Yeah.
And you spoke that you started writing in 2019. Is that correct?
Yes, but that's when I knew that I exactly started writing. But it's something I've been doing for quite a lot of time when I'm much younger. But, when I knew exactly that I started writing, that was when I started writing my first novel, Etean's Destiny. That's when I can vouch that, yes, this is the time I started writing. So, yeah, that's basically when I actually started writing. And from there, I've been writing poems and some other things also.
Interesting. And I noticed from the pattern of your poetry that you have more of a narrative style of expression. Is that same with all of your books?
Yes, for Fate in the Dungeon of Doom, it's of three sections. We have the first part, which is the Poems of Fate, and the second one, the Poems of Kwame. It's the second poem, the Poems of Kwame, that takes the poem, the style of a narrative poetry. That's the art of telling story in form of poetry. This more or less like you're writing a story, but it's being told in form of poetry, like we have in the Poems of Kwame, where you have Vanessa telling the story, and you have Kwame being the protagonist, and several other, character there. So the other part, too, which is the third part, did not take the style of narrative poetry. So the Fate in the Dungeon of Doom, the second poem, which is the Poems of Kwame, actually, is the one that, I love to take it as a style of a narrative poem. This is not something that's actually particular to a lot of my poem. It's just to this particular style that I love to, utilize it for the Poems of Kwame.
Okay, good. So let's just dive into the book. I found the book very interesting. Like the trilogy, the first part, the second part, and the third part. And for the first part, the Fate in the Dungeon of Doom, there's this nostalgic feelings that the first part gives. And every human can relate to it when you talk about fate and destiny and Kismet. I wanted to ask you, what were you thinking when you wrote this first part of this book, Fate in the Dungeon of Doom?
Yeah, I love to think of myself as a philosopher. I love thinking and I love asking quite a lot of questions about the reality of the human condition. And, I just thought within myself that, what about fate? What about fate? And if the lifestyle of a man can actually be classified to the making of fate, or there's some force that is in construct with it. And in fate, I tend to ask quite a lot of questions about the condition of the human being. If fate is the making of ourselves or an anonymous destination, if the lifestyle of a man, if the path of life is all in the line of fate, or we are just mere mortal. And if a man actually knows its destiny, those are one of the, there's quite a lot of contemplation that came up in the book. And I just felt that, let's talk about fate. Let's talk about fate. What happens if something like this happened to human being? Do we call it fate? Do we call it fate, or it's just like a path that is ordained from every man to, tread on path? So those are just quite a lot of contemplation and introspection leads to the making of the first part in the Poems of Fate.
When I was reading the poem, I saw some similarity with George Herbert's Pulley. For George Herbert's Pulley, George Herbert wrote about our weariness and then the search for the sense of accomplishment drives us to God. And when reading the Fate in Dungeon of Doom, there is this similarity about trying to pursue, trying to answer, trying to find what fate actually means. I'm trying to see how you were able to philosophize and juxtapose the two together, like trying to juggle what fate means, what destiny means, and then the essence of maybe seeking, there's this call, seeking maybe perhaps God. I don't want. So what will you say to that?
Well, I haven't heard of George Herbert, you call it, but I haven't really get to know about who he was. But it's just part of my thinking, because I love to call myself a thinker. I love thinking actually quite much, and the part of the thing that I came up with is to look at the construct there is between destiny and fate. Which one acts more power over another? Can we call fate and what actually a man would tend to look at fate for. And part of my contemplation, I asked quite a lot of questions in the book, some of which were, answered alongside, and many of which were left unanswered. And part of my contemplation in the book was trying to know if destiny is a part of a man, and if fate is a destination that a man ought to meet. And there was, the book is actually written from the perception of a narrator who doesn't have a good end, who is yearning, who is asking quite a lot of difficult questions, and from the tone of the narrator, it's quite very obvious that is a dejected person, is someone who has been thrust into different kind of life situation and asking God, asking about his fate, if he has a purpose on earth, asking about his own condition, if he's going to meet fate, which he's not sure he would meet. So part of the contemplation is just to lay the kind of question between destiny and fate. Because actually, if you go into the dictionary, they tend to have the same meaning: destiny, fate, kismet. But as a philosopher, I kind of think about it that one asks a much more better understanding than the other. One, like I said in the book, one is like a path, while the other is like a destination. And all of this is actually what I just love to think about and ask a lot of questions about the human fate, the human condition, and just part of my contemplation, I'll put it that way.
And I'm wondering some aspect, because you spoke a lot that your poems are not for a specific set of persons, for Christians. Yeah. But I wonder your use of allusion. There was classical allusion in your book. There was a part of your poem where you talked about Shakespeare, when you talked about, that's much later part in the poem. When you're philosophizing about faith, there's this use of biblical allusion. And then you tend to say that your poem is not just for a particular set, let's say the Christian set. So I begin to wonder, do you still feel that since your readers try to critique the poem from that angle, and it appeals to religious sentiment, don't you feel that your poem is actually for
my kind of poems here, my kind of poetry, I'm a kind of reader that I'd love to make my poem particular to everybody. I don't like to generalize it that, okay, my style of writing is only made for a particular religion or for particular people. I don't love to think it that way. Faith is it's something that is assigned to everybody, irrespective of your religion, your race, your ethnicity, your nationality. And I just love to put it that way and to make it that this is not only a poem that is made for Christian. I'm a Christian actually, but I'm not writing specifically for Christian. This is something that anybody can read, irrespective of your religion, belief, your long-held intuitions, or whatsoever you tend to look at it. And when people talk about it's biblical, it's spiritual, well, I knew I have a little bit of the style of the Bible, even though there's nothing like a quote or a biblical quote there in it, but I just I just love to make it.
Yeah, and then it appeals to the religious sentiment. So that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just love to make it to be outside of religion, because this is a topic that is not religion based. I just love to make it something that is open to everybody, because I don't want to write for, but this is something that I tend to be read in university, in schools and colleges. And students come together from different backgrounds. So there's no particular style or a particular audience that I have in mind while I was writing the book.
I see. Let me use a portion of your poem to you. When you said, come faith, don't deny that you're mine. I know I have a good faith, but why do I still suffer at the dungeon of doom? I feel the style of writing faith was, there's this high-level use of rhetorical questions to answer because of the uncertainty of man knowing faith per se. Do you feel it's something unknowable, unsearchable, unfathomable? Do you feel that about faith?
Well, the subject of faith itself, it's something that is broad. It's like a philosophical aspect that you can't really point a hand and say this is how it works and this is how it works. So the topic of faith itself is a broad subject. It's something that I myself I do not know. And more like the question I asked in the book, if a man knows his fate, I don't think there's anybody on earth that ever knows his fate. You don't know what is going to be your end. You don't know your destination. You don't even know what is going to happen to you tomorrow. Even the best of seers, the best of people that sees the future, whatsoever they're being called, they have a little knowledge of what comes of tomorrow's of someone's event tomorrow, and all of that is actually what I love to ask. And going back to your question, it's like part of my contemplation actually, and the part of my words, and part of my questions, and part of my imagination, part of my a lot of questions being raised in the book. Like I've got a lot of them I did not answer. I want the reader to provide answer to themselves, because myself of writing, I love to ask questions, and I think curiosity is something that is essential in life, and it's something that people can actually relate to and say, oh yeah, what's it trying to say here? Because I just love to leave people, in suspense, let them search for the meaning themselves.
I see. Okay, now we're moving to the poems of Vanessa. As for me as a reader, I feel it's a continuity of faith. A symbolism, poems of Kwame rather. Yeah. The poems of Kwame to me looks like faith, while Vanessa looks like someone questioning faith, because Kwame goes missing, and Vanessa at every point of the poem laments about the search, the futility to searching for Kwame. Is there a similarity with poems of Kwame and then Faith in the Journey of Doom, or is just from my own perspective as a reader?
Yeah, it's different. They don't have, it's not a continuity. The poems of Kwame is the story itself. It's a different thing entirely. And the narrator in the first poem is different from the narrator in the second poem. So Kwame is just like a young boy who has gone missing, and Vanessa, the mother, questioning about the whereabouts of her son who has gone missing for quite a lot of years. And part of our contemplation was asking Kwame when he would come home. Kwame is not fate, it's a different thing entirely. And that's actually fine, because I've actually had another person mention that the poems of Kwame is quite very sad, and it was curious if Kwame was actually the lad in the first part of the book. And I was like, oh no, Kwame is a different thing entirely. Actually, the poems of Kwame should have been a book itself, a different book on itself, because it's more or less like a narration, a story being told in form of poetry. And but it's just different. They're not the same thing. It's two different story and parts to tell.
So at this point, I rather ask you, is Kwame ever found?
Yeah, up to now, Kwame is still missing, and I'm looking forward to having another book on the continuation of the poems of Kwame, to call it the complete poems of Kwame. Well, we're hoping for the Vanessa will find Kwame someday, but as of the time that this interview is made, Kwame is still missing. Yeah, and I'm also looking forward to exploring that in the forthcoming novel, Etean's Destiny.
I will also talk about the poems of Kwame on the issue of cultural conflict. A cultural conflict in terms of, I also say similarity with poems of Kwame with lamentation of songs of Okonkwo and Lawino, where the woman was lamenting that her husband has abandoned the ways of the tradition of the people, and then due to westernization. And then I see that similar to the poems of Kwame, where Vanessa tends to abandon her faith in Christianity and goes to seek to consult other gods for consultation. Yeah. And is there a similarity with that one abandoning their precept to a particular faith, and out of curiosity, out of agitation, they go to consult oracles. So are you trying to juxtapose that one aspect of belief is greater than the aspect of belief? I'm talking now as an Africanist. Like, one aspect of belief is greater than the other aspect of belief. Is that what you're trying to portray in that poem?
Well, to answer that question, I haven't experienced any of occult, you name it. Oh no, I haven't read something like that. But to look into it, Vanessa is someone who has passed through quite a lot in the quest of looking for a son. She's someone who has seen quite a lot, and she was a very devoted Christian, as told in the poem. But ever since Kwame has gone missing, it's quite very sad for a mother to not know the whereabouts of her child. And this is someone that you don't even know if he's alive or dead. And part of the question that were raised in the book was Vanessa's query to know where Kwame is. She shed quite a lot of tears, asked quite a lot of questions. Kwame, where are you? Kwame, when will you come home? Kwame, whenever I see a young bearded man in the street, I thought it's you. Whenever I hear someone's voice speaking at the street side, I said, oh yeah, that looks like Kwame. So all of this makes her in a horrible situation. She's pain, she's in agony, she's in a lot of anguish. And as a means to know where her son is. Kwame actually is a widow itself. I don't know if I mentioned that in the book. And she's actually a poor woman.
Yeah, because her husband didn't even talk all through.
Absolutely, yeah. The husband doesn't really pay close attention to all of her mystery and stuff like that. So Vanessa left a Christian folks believe. When you see a lot of trouble, you tend to look for another way. Like the Yoruba people will say "katawo libo." Yeah, so it moves into another dimension whereby she begins to look at, okay, if I don't know where my son is, I think as a Christian, let me look for other means to find or to know where he actually is. That's where she began to look, trying to consult Shango, try to consult Ogun and Osoyin, and quite a lot of the gods of Africa. And even at that, what actually led to that was that Vanessa had consulted quite a lot of prophets, as mentioned in the book, fake prophet. Sometimes she got scammed. Sometimes they told her that, okay, your son is going to arrive at so date. And I think there's a particular poem.
The son was struck with madness or something, but a prophet told her that the son is struck with madness.
There's actually quite a lot of illusion about the whereabouts of Kwame from the different sort of prophet that Vanessa has consulted. And most of them are actually fake prophets. Some of them are real, some of them are not real. And they just give her quite a lot of suspicion that, oh yeah, okay, Kwame is in so places in this. But there's no certain, truthiness to that. Nobody actually knows where he is. And after Vanessa has seen that, the Christian fold is not helping matter. The prophets are not helping matter. Then let me look out for another way. That's when she began to consult Osoyin, Shango, Ogun, and quite a lot of other gods. And it's something that she does out of her tears. She's not really that happy about it because she used to be a very devoted Christian. And coming back into your question that if one religion or stuff is greater than the other, well, I have no answer to that. I'm not trying to play something like that. But the fact that the problem of Vanessa had led her to looking into another way, and this is actually something you can see in the society today, of people asking not even about Kwame, asking for probably a certain.
That was why I asked you the question about the similarity with Fate in the Dungeon of Doom and the poems of Kwame, because out of desperation at times people tend to seek what that means. They tend to seek the gods, traditional gods, to consult to know their fate. So that's also I wanted to juggle the two together, because to me it appears that it looks like a continuation for Vanessa to question the whereabouts of her son, and then tends to consult other gods for knowing the whereabouts of.
Because she thought that since she has prayed and she has given money to quite a lot of prophets, assuming Vanessa is a rich person, she'll have been scammed more than her imagination. And part of all of this is what led her that, okay, if I move into the spiritual manner, trying to look for. She also consulted some foreseers to know where her child is, and all of them just give her fake illusions that this is what it is, this is what it is, but nobody actually know exactly where Kwame is, and that actually has kept Vanessa in years of pain, because Kwame is a foxed son. Kwame is the strength of her mother. Kwame is there's a poem there also that talks about all of that. Vanessa's pain, it's something very, very deep and quite sad to talk about.
I wanted to ask about the story writing. I found the poem very interesting, and then the interest of this poem, aside from the tone it uses, the simplicity, the language of your poems, all of your poems are simple to grasp. So I tend to wonder, is that a form of poetic license on your own part, on using the simple language for expression. Is that your pattern of writing?
I think that if I write in a simple manner with simplicity, then readers will be able to understand it irrespective of their educational background or academic level. And I just thought that it's fine to make things easy for people to read. Unlike other poems, I've actually read some poems by some well-known poet, and I tend to not understand what they're talking about. The use of language, the figurative expression, the use of or whatsoever they call it. So it's quite somehow very difficult to understand. And I just thought that, okay, this is a story that I think everybody should hear. And the best way to tell it is to make it very simple, make it very appealing, make it very, in a way that people can welcome it and receive it and be able to relate to it in a level of reality. And that's why I just come up of making it very simple and easy to access. So everybody, irrespective of their backgrounds, levels, and stuff. So just love to make it that way.
Okay, let's move to the third part of your poem. And I found all the poems that are very interesting. Well, we'll talk about just two of them. In the Woman of Breast, where you epitomize Asha Yusuf, I found your perception of the womanhood and appealing, and try to see the way writers, artists try to fetishize or sexualize women. But your perspective of womanhood has to do with a mixture of pain, suffering, boldness, strength, all adjectives that qualifies masculinity. So would I be wrong or right to say you are a feminist?
That's a very good one. But in the poems of A Woman of Breast, it's actually a poem that I've written to dedicate specifically to Aisha Yusufu, the Nigerian socio-political activist, after I've seen her levels of boldness in the Nigerian society. She's someone that I admire so much. And I thought that, okay, this is something that is not really particular among women. Aisha possesses a trait, a features to me, that I think that most people are not really, familiar with. And I just thought of, coming up with the concept that let me write a poem. Let me write a poem to dedicate her resilience, her courage, her boldness. Talk about the issue of the Boko Haram, the Bring Back Our Guest campaign. She was the one who initiated. They talk about the NSAS protest, talk about the other issues that Yusuf has actually been someone that I really admire so much. I love to use the word breast. Like most people said, I talk about the word breast, and they said it's somewhat not good to the hearing. There's a word being used for that. But I was like, breast is like a figurative expression. It's like an idiom to qualify courage, to qualify a resilience, a strength, a passion. And that's why I just love to use it. Like there's a place I wrote that from our breast, many nations will suck, crying babies, and come and suck from the breast of resilience, power, and stuff. So I just love to use the word breast as a means to express a passion, a love, a courage for being a Nigerian socio-political activist. So there's nothing, I don't really have something in mind when I was actually writing. It's just from my own intuition. I just love to put it that way.
But there's similarity when it talks about strength, there's similarity of the characteristics of Aisha Yusuf in your poem, and A Woman of Breast. And when you were writing a poem, I believe this should be an eulogy to your mother, when you wrote A Wife Like a Mother.
Oh, yes.
So, it still calls for the question that there is this perception of women, which is quite very interesting, of not just of a sexualized being, but someone of strength, courage, and people that show resilience to nature and to the society. And the strength of those two poems. Now, going back to Vanessa, despite her poem, her sorrow, her agony, she was still optimistic that one day, that Kwame, interesting. And lastly, I have one interesting question to ask you. I find two of your poems amusing, comic, and then I believe every poet would be interested to read it. In Poets Are Thieves, you said, pardon me for saying poets are thieves. Maybe not all of them are thieves, but the real ones, the real and passionate ones, will have stolen in one way or the other. And what do poets steal they steal books. So I have one question for you. Are you a thief?
Well, that's it's just it's one of the
On a comical style, I'm just asking that.
one of the style of poetry is to bring out amusement out of it and to bring out comics out of poetry. And I just thought to myself that okay, let's produce something that people would laugh when they read. And I just come up with the word of talking about poets are thief and the perception that they are thieves in the view that they loves books and they can do anything to acquire books, like stealing. That's why I talk about people stealing books in the library, people talking about books like Soyinka, Gabriel Okraya, and quite a lot of them that I mentioned in the book. So I'm not a thief.
But the other part of the question is to ask you that, so any poet that has not significantly, is that poet, is that person?
One of the idea that I think to leave or to raise there is that if I keep buying all the books I want to read, I will go bankrupt.
Yeah, you said that in the last time of the poem.
Yeah, so that shows a poet's passion towards reading. Well, I don't know if other poets out there, but I think, like I said, the real ones, the people that are passionate about reading and passionate about poetry should have stolen a book in one way or the other. But I can't really actually think of anyone who will be passionate as a writer who hasn't stolen a book yet, because I've actually done that in time.
Well, that's quite amusing. And the other part of the bottom line of this is that there's this significance of writers. Let's just make an umbrella for them now. Yeah. Writers to reading. It's important for a writer to read, and then they can read from their mentors, from those that have set the line to follow, the being line to follow. That's quite interesting. So, Peter, it's nice having you on the show to talk about fate in the dungeon of doom. Do you have any word of wisdom to give to the viewer?
Yes, I would just love to say that, thanks, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And it's actually a book that I think would resonate with quite a lot of people. And just like the first part, the second part, and the third part, you can find something that will relate to you, that will speak to you in person. And for people who would love to get a copy of the book, it's available on Amazon for some few dollars. And once again, thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.